for many blessings and your amazing grace. We pray for those, as my colleague did earlier, in North Carolina and South Carolina, who are enduring hardships right now. And we pray as a city that we will pull on our abilities, in particular our experience from Hugo, to help those in need. As Christians, we are all renewed. We are reborn. And as individuals, let us not forget those in harm's way when they drop out of the headlines and the news media decides not to lead with the tragedy and hardships in North Carolina and South Carolina. We pray for our country. We pray for our president, our governor, our mayor, and all of our staff that came forward most recently to prepare in the event that that storm had come 200 miles south. Please let them know that they're appreciated, and we thank them because they go above and beyond. We pray for the first responders. We pray for our military. Nothing like being in need and those big trucks show up. Now, as we go about the business of the city of Charleston, we pray for the best of our intellect as we go about doing the work for our citizens. These prayers we ask for in your name. Let us all say, amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. A short announcement for those who have not been here before. In the very unlikely event that we needed to exit the building, we've got these two exits right here and one exit from the room to my right. Do not use the elevator if we had to evacuate the building, but use the two stairways going down and then the single stairway going out the front from the first floor. So first we have a couple of proclamations. We want to recognize an incredible organization that's celebrating its 40th anniversary. I'd like to ask Carol Linville, the Pet Helpers founder, and Alan Berger, who is their executive director, to please join me up here on the
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
on the dais. And I would like to make this proclamation to you.
Thank you.
Great. Whereas Pet Helpers celebrated its 40th anniversary, June of 2018, Pet Helpers was founded by Carol Linville, a pioneer in the animal welfare world, with the mission to end the euthanasia of all adoptable animals. Pet Helpers became the first no-kill animal shelter in the Lowcountry. Whereas Carol began her animal-saving journey with the weekly Pet of the Week column for local newspapers, but knew that she needed to do more to start rescuing cats and dogs from high-kill shelters and help them find loving and caring homes. And whereas Carol lives every day focused on rescuing animals and has saved tens of thousands of furry lives over 40 years through her dedication and drive and by speaking out on behalf of the animals. Whereas with the help of countless friends and supporters, Pet Helpers moved to its current modern shelter at 1447 Folly Road in 2008, featuring a low-cost spay-neuter clinic open to the public. And whereas Carol continues to further Pet Helpers' mission, matching all animals to their new families for a lifetime commitment of love and care. And the city of Charleston is proud and honored to have Pet Helpers as part of the community for 40 years and takes great pleasure in helping to celebrate this milestone. Congratulations and best wishes to Pet Helpers for its ongoing dedication to saving animals and serving as a voice for all creatures. Therefore, I, John J. Tecklenburg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, in honor of your 40th anniversary, do proclaim today as Pet Helpers' 40th Anniversary Day. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Bigwell.
Yeah, thank you. Congratulations.
Never want to miss an opportunity when I have an audience.
It's been a long walk. Actually, I feel like 100, but some of you in here that have walked and made change in the world understand that. We have a lot more to do, and when you talk about how blessed we are, by the way, today or from this past week, we're reaching out to help others upstate and in North Carolina because we have thousands of animals in trouble. And those are the humans that go with them because many risk their lives to save their animals. So we are continuing to do our work not only in the Low Country and here in Charleston, and we're so proud to be the only shelter in the city of Charleston, Mr. Mayor. I'm joining Michael Moore that was here earlier. Oh, I like having a gavel. My board won't let me have one at our meeting. So, but I do want to mention we have a 40th anniversary Furball Gala at the Francis Marion, November 10th, 6:30 p.m. It's going to be an awesome event. I invite everyone here. Tickets are $300 a couple. But it's music, entertainment, dancing, open bar, a lot of other things to raise over $150,000 for pet helpers. And we're inviting Mayor Tecklenburg to come play the piano. Oh, okay. And I've got him on the spot now, so while I have this opportunity, Mayor, November 10th, just no pressure, no pressure. Thank you so very much. And come visit us. We're open 7 days a week on James Island.
Y'all want to have a picture together real quick?
Yes, I'd love to.
Step over here a little bit and she'll catch us from over there. All right. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So
and spay and neuter your pets. Thank you.
Right. And next, we have a proclamation recognizing a remarkable woman, Lynn's Piper Loomis. She's the 2018 Elizabeth Dole Caretaker Fellow. I'd like to invite Lynn's and her husband Jeremy and her children Whitney and Cheyenne to join me. Please come forward. Welcome. Come on over if you will. Hey Jeremy, how you doing, man? Hey, welcome. How are you? So, this proclamation says, whereas the city of Charleston wishes to recognize one of our most dedicated citizens, Lynn's Piper Loomis, is a caregiver who tends to one of our hidden heroes as part of the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. She is the 2018 Elizabeth Dole Caregiver Fellow who shares her personal story to bring vital attention to the tremendous challenges caregivers face. Whereas a military wife and mother, Lynn's has been a steadfast caregiver to her soulmate and husband for more than 10 years, supporting him as he has battled cancer, both visible and invisible wounds, a mobility-limiting disability, and traumatic brain injury. Whereas though she has many days that are major struggles, Lynn's finds strength in her day-to-day through prayer, hope, faith in God, and a positive attitude, choosing to live in the moment and focus on the good things of life. Whereas a continuing advocate, she hopes to share her story in an effort to improve relationships between the caregiver, wounded warrior, Veterans Administration, as well as to implement programs that support and encourage children of wounded warriors, such as her two lovely daughters. And Lynn's is also involved with Tri-County Veteran Support Network, a community of agencies dedicated to implementing effective advocacy and holistic services to veterans and their families. I congratulate Lynn's on being a 2018 Elizabeth Dole Caregiver Fellow and thank her for her service to our hidden heroes and our community, modeled through her unselfish sacrifice and unswerving loyalty to her husband and family. Therefore, I, John J. Tecklenburg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, on behalf of City Council, also proclaim today is Lynn's Piper Loomis Day in the City of Charleston. Let's give her a round of applause. Would you like to say a few words to us, Lynn? Yeah.
I want to say that this city is incredible, a huge support for our military and veterans, and I couldn't be more honored or privileged to represent Charleston and South Carolina. So thank you to you.
Great. Thank you.
That's a nice picture.
Congratulations and thanks for being with us. It's always good to see you. Glad you're doing all right. Good work. Congratulations. So, from where?
You're right.
Okay. All right, next I want to take a general opportunity to thank the many people and organizations who offered their support and were instrumental in the city's Hurricane Florence preparation over the last couple of weeks. I mean, it's really been a remarkable effort by our staff and by so many community partners, and it was all hands on deck. While Charleston was fortunately spared that direct hit, there were countless people, groups, and organizations that answered the call, lent their support so that we would be prepared for whatever came our way. Many are here tonight to be recognized and thanked for their tremendous support in person. Some were unable to attend as their focus has now shifted to helping our neighbors in North Carolina recover from a much harder hit. We plan to follow tonight's recognition with a formal resolution in the next few weeks, again thanking those who stood by our city and helped us prepare for what could have been worse. So I'm going to call out some names and organizations, and I'm going to apologize in advance if someone's here that I haven't gotten your name, or maybe I'll ask you to just identify yourself. But the National Guard I'm going to start with, and we have representatives here, I believe Lieutenant Colonel Snow and Sergeant Major Guess. I'm going to ask everybody to wait for any applause, just remain standing as, and do you have some other folks with you? Welcome. That's the National Guard. Captain Jason Burns with the Salvation Army. Welcome, and thank you for those delightful meals you supplied our city staff down at the MEOC over the last week. We really appreciate it. Amanda Baldwin and Brittany Rubin with the Red Cross. The Red Cross once again did a terrific job in our Tri-County region and throughout the affected area running shelters. Councilmember Seekings with Carter, please stand. Oscar Douglas with the Charleston County School District. Thank you for being with us tonight, Oscar. Jana Swenson, who is our interpreter for those that needed a little help with an interpretation. She was there for all the press conferences we gave. Doug Warner and the folks at the Convention Visitors Bureau. Hey, Doug, they helped in many ways, including helping us identify and provide some lodging for our public service, parks, and recreation employees who were positioned and ready to help. Stacy Deneau is with us tonight from 180 Place, and that's a whole story in itself. When folks came back to the city after the Red Cross closed their shelters, somehow we got a lot more back than we sent up, so to speak, and Stacy and 180 Place and Maria Elena really stepped up to the occasion. And Maria Elena, you're next on my list. We've already introduced her earlier with Military Community Connections. Frances Hilton with Blue Cross Blue Shield, they offered free telehealth visits to their members. Thank you so much for that. And in a similar fashion, Sean Valenta with MUSC is the administrator of their telehealth, and they offered free telehealth visits to their members and to folks that were in the Red Cross shelters, correct? Tony Carter and Matt Paulus with Sanders Brothers Construction. Are y'all with us? Thank you for being with us. They helped to provide the pumps and the storm drain cleaning ahead of the storm. So we had those positioned in places. Unable to attend but involved with these preparations included Fred Warner, Joseph Hatton, Matthew Floyd, Anthony Schumpert, Michelle Herndon, Tony Coleman, Gavin Fletcher, Lewis Howell, Kurt Beck. Those are all folks with Sanders Brothers, correct? Wow, what a team. Murray Sand, Arthur DeHay, and Erwin Huseman. Are y'all with us? Thank you for being with us. And it was over the weekend that we first came up with we need some sand, and they really responded off hours to the call, did whatever we needed to do to bring some sand in and help our citizens have those available. Kelly Barnhart and Matt Holly with Hampton Inn, Daniel Island. Where are y'all? Are y'all here? Well, we'll thank them. Christy Tolley with Citadel Mall. They offered their facilities as a staging area in case we needed high ground West Ashley. Tyler Stott with Planet Fitness. Are you here? Thank you for providing showers for our Charleston police officers who were working during the storm. Now, who have I missed? Just please stand up and identify yourself if you are here.
Charleston County.
Charleston County is here. The Sheriff's Department. Oh, yeah.
With the personnel.
Please share your name, sir.
I'm Chief Deputy Willis Beatty.
Thank you, Will.
Major Caitlin Harlan.
And they, among other things, over the weekend and over the hurricane, were willing to open up the warming shelter for us when we needed that this past Saturday night. Unable to attend, but should still be recognized, Kevin Lesowitz with Call 2 Haul Trucking. They donated 4 loads of sand at Sumar Street. They're unable to attend because they're already got their trucks up in North Carolina helping people up there. B&C Land Development Company also helped provide some of the pumps that we pre-positioned in places around the city. Dorian Peterson and Megan Jakes with Chick-fil-A West Ashley gave 100 sandwiches to our first responders and evacuees. The owner, Megan, she coordinated the effort. She's unable to be with us because she just had a baby. So congratulations to Megan. So can we all give just a huge round of applause for all these partners? And I would be remiss if I didn't also, and I'll separately mention the incredible teamwork and work of our City of Charleston staff. Shannon Scaff is our new emergency director. Where's Shannon? Are you here this evening? He's over here. Boy, brand new on the job. He really, he passed the audition. City staff mentioned that he passed the audition, and then both of our chiefs, Chief Reynolds and Chief Courier, both of course in our incident command system, both served as incident commanders. I don't see the chiefs here tonight. Chief Curry is back there. I think Chief Reynolds has a police advisory committee meeting. So it was kind of interesting that 3 of our key leaders, are all brand new to the city, but I tell you, they did a remarkable job. But the teamwork of all the departments, and I want to share with everyone that a lot of times when an emergency comes along, you do think primarily of our police and fire department, and they did an incredible job. I mean, they really did. But sometimes lost in the shuffle is those other city employees, the folks that trim trees and work in our parks, and our stormwater drivers, and our heavy equipment drivers, and folks like that. And they really are, they're there when we call them. And they're on duty, they're on call, their morale was great. The preparations were, the work was incredible, and they were ready for whatever came. They really were. So if I may ask one more time, let's give our city employees a round of applause. They did a great job. So the last thing I'll mention about the storm is that today, area low country mayors, along with myself, announced a partnership with the Coastal Community Foundation for our community to be able to raise some local dollars to help those who were really impacted by the storm in other parts of South Carolina and in North Carolina. So you can go to coastalcommunityfund.org, and there's a link there to be able to give to storm relief, Florence relief. 100% of all the donations will go directly to storm relief, and the foundation, the Coastal Community Foundation, will be working with similar foundations both in the Myrtle Beach area and in North Carolina to make sure the funds are go where they're most needed. And then in addition to that, our city has been in touch with the city of Wilmington, among others, and there's a little formal process going on of a request for specific help, but we do plan as a city to send resources, both people and materials, to help with the recovery effort in Wilmington. And I've been in touch with mayors in other cities, including New Bern, North Carolina, Myrtle Beach, and Georgetown to assist them as well. So anyway, we're definitely working to pay it forward. Now, next is our public hearings, and we have none. So that's, we'll have some of those next week. We have our approval of city council minutes from August 21.
Move for approval.
I got a motion to approve and second. Any deletions or additions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is our citizens participation period. Did we have a sign-up sheet, Jennifer? So we have 4 folks that have signed up. I would ask that you keep your remarks 2 minutes. Since there's just a few here, I'll call them out. Mohammed Idris is first. Mohammed? Mark Knapp is on deck.
Hey, City Council, Mohammed Idris. I want to thank Councilman Seeking. For verifying something I said 12 years ago, that money talks and everything else walks. Also, I want to thank the city for recognizing the Muslim sister and community or the health department that they did. I think that was very rewarding. And I want to thank Councilman White for sharing his concern and telling me that he appreciated me coming to City Council. And I thank you, Councilman White. I had a seizure the other day, and I blacked out. And I ended up in the Charleston place in the bar, and I came up with this. It's the price list of beer, wine, and whiskey. And we know that alcohol destroys a great deal of people here in the city of Charleston and around the world. So I'll be working with that now. But I want to thank you all again for recognizing the Muslim sister. And I want to thank you, Councilman White, for recognizing when you said that, Muhammad, you don't miss special meeting, you come to regular meeting, you be here sometime and the councilman don't be here. I believe that was very rewarding. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mark Knapp.
It's been an interesting last 3 or 4 weeks. Of course, Chicken Little survived, but I told everybody I knew it wasn't coming here. I didn't have that Hugo feeling. But everybody thinks their weathermen get paid 6 figures so they can be wrong 90% of the time. So what the hey? A couple things that really are bothering me. Number one, apparently there are 2 investigations, one by the FBI and SLED, that's really concerning me. I'm not going to go any further than that. I just hope everybody knows about it. Next thing is I keep hearing, I've been talking to a guy that owns a church over in Bees Ferry that floods every time. And I'm a little concerned that we're not really moving in the right direction on solving this problem. I mean, I've come up with 2 solutions, but instead we keep throwing money at engineers. Just because they got a PE doesn't necessarily mean they know what they're doing. So I'm a little concerned at how we're going about this. I already have 2 plans that would probably solve the problems. And then, you know, my next problem is a really serious one with the police department. A young lady, 22-year veteran, got fired because she told a guy that maybe he needs to go get an attorney. 22 years, not a thing in her folder. And she gets fired for suggesting maybe he needs to go see an attorney. I think public safety people need a little look at that one. That concerns me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Keith Anderson. Come on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here to speak. My name is Keith Anderson, and I'm with a company called Flood Defense Group. We have stockpiles of flood defense barriers all over America, including a huge stockpile of flood barriers right here in Charleston. Just a quick who I am. I mean, I protected 12 homes just in the city of Charleston during this hurricane, not to mention a number of homes outside of Charleston, North Carolina, Virginia. I have projects going on all over the path of the hurricane as we speak. And the theme that I'm finding, particularly here in Charleston, is when I go to all these homeowners is what their home is their investment. And obviously they're all extremely scared. They're flooding again and again and again, and their values of their home, their investment is going down, and essentially they're losing their investment. And so I think I'm just going to echo what I've heard from so many homeowners is that, you know, obviously they don't want to wait 10 years or 5 years or 2 years. They want to be able to have a solution to combat flooding. So I just kind of want to leave. I did actually do a write-up with multiple flood defense options for the city of Charleston, where we, as a provider of flood barriers, do have the ability to raise all 6.2 miles of the battery in a matter of 1 or 2 days with a temporary flood defense barrier that is removable and 100% reusable, roughly at a cost of $3.1 million, plus obviously the support of a water truck from the city. But, you know, I understand that you guys are paying, you know, significant amounts of money for studies and to learn more about the situation, and I just want to say that we have the ability to provide a barrier that will raise the battery all 6.2 miles for $3.1 million. Thank you. And basically, one final thing is FEMA. Obviously, I work all over the country doing flood barriers. A lot of times I provide barriers when people are in an emergency. Obviously, there's this declared disaster, and there's after funds that are available that I believe are totally available for you guys. So that's all. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir. Susan Lyons.
Hi, I'm Susan Lyons with Groundswell. I want to sort of echo what Keith said and say that this has been a really horrible week here in Charleston, but nothing compared to what's going on 200 miles north, as Mr. Waring said. My concern is that from last year to this year, nothing changed here in the city of Charleston that would have protected the families who live here and the homes that they're trying desperately to save. And I'm one of them, but we've got a lot of people here who, as Keith said, are scared to death. And the kind of storm that hit North Carolina almost hit us here. Had that happened, all the good work that all those good people you mentioned would have been for naught, because we would have been drowning. We need an interim protection plan for the city of Charleston to protect the people who live here until the time that we get the permanent infrastructure that will make the city safe. And I just beseech the city council and the mayor to get going on this now in the middle of this season so that we don't face another season terrified. We are all really scared, and we just don't have the protection that we feel we deserve. There's money to be found. There are answers to be found. And it's hard for a lot of us to understand why that's not happening. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I understand we're going to defer our presentation for the Forest Acres Drainage Improvement Award until next week. So next would be a
week after. The person, one of the speakers is ill.
Oh, okay. Maybe the next 2 meetings, but we're deferring that regardless. So Jacob Lindsay, are you prepared to make a little report on short-term rentals ordinance?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a report back to council in regards to short-term rentals and the requested variances from the short-term rental process that we heard from city council members some time ago. So first of all, I'm going to give a brief recap, talk about the folks who have worked on this, talk about where we are, and then what we recommend. So the first thing is that we received requests from a number of council members for variances or considerations for different types of STRs that aren't allowed in the current ordinance. And we heard you. I just want to let you know we have looked into them. We heard you. We heard these requests. We heard about requests for short-term rentals to operate on places like King Street, Upper and Lower, on Savannah Highway. Folks with James Island and even folks downtown who want to be able to operate a short-term rental, but they aren't allowed to by the current ordinance. So we heard those requests. We heard requests for parking to be accommodated and parking decks and many other things, and we've looked into all of those. Now, first of all, I want to talk a little bit about all the folks who are working on this. And the planning department, of course, helped to create the ordinances, and we are sort of shepherding the many staff who are working on this as we go through the process. But this is also being done with tremendous input from, of course, livability and Dan Riccio, as well as legal. Chip McQueenie and Sterling Halverson have done a lot of work on this. And also the departments of building inspections, fire, IT, process improvement, and BFRC, all of whom meet weekly. We have this major meeting of everybody weekly to roll this thing out. So with that said, the new ordinance has been launched, and we have just begun the process, and it's working. And we're off to a pretty good start. And there are 2 sorts of reports back from this. The first is for zoning from my department, and the second is livability from Dan's department. And the first thing from our standpoint, just to give some numbers to y'all in terms of what we've done so far, there were already existing 181 legally entitled short-term rentals in the city before we came through with the new system. They were either B&Bs or commercial STRs, and there were 54 existing B&B units and 127 existing commercial STR units. We've gone through all of those. We've certified that they're existing. They're from the old system and they're grandfathered in. We've contacted all those folks and let them know that. We've received 102 applications for the new ordinance for new short-term rentals under this new system. And the staff have been working through these, and it takes a couple months in order for this to happen. Now, it's the first time through. We think we can get that permit time down. So this is our first time doing it, of course. New forms, new computer system, all that. So far, of those, 9 of them have been denied. They weren't eligible for one reason or another. 3 of them have been fully issued, totally operational, and 3 of them are pending, meaning the owners just need to come in and pay their final fee and get their BLCO, their business license and certificate of occupancy. Now, in general, about a 2-month time to approval. Not bad, but we know we can improve that. So that's what we've seen from the zoning standpoint. And from Dan, we have some really great numbers, and they've got their software up and running, which is their enforcement software. And they're doing a phenomenal job with their additional staff that you all approved. And Dan sends you his thanks for approving those additional staff, by the way, because you put them to work. The software that they're using in addition to staff have identified 1,669 short-term rental listings. That's what we see online. 1,669. Of those, 1,297 are under review for validation. They're in the queue, staff sees them, and they are validating, they're working through them. 353 properties have been confirmed, meaning that they have taken the software and they've matched it with an address, and they know it's real and it's out there. 58 of those are compliant, meaning that they are approved and permitted, they're okay within the city system, they're good to go. 185 of those are not compliant. Of those, 87 letters have been sent out. Of those, 13 summons have been issued, and they will appear in livability court in October. 40 listings so far have been removed. They've been removed off of the online sites. The owners have said, okay, we're going to take down our listing, we're going to comply, we're not going to operate for now. And during that same period of time, we received 18 complaints from neighbors, all of which have been logged. So we're just really beginning the process of intaking and of enforcing, but it's working, and we're off to a really great start. So with that said, what we would like to ask of you is for you to consider giving all of the staff a little more time to continue to roll this process out. And what that's going to give us is more quantitative data, more numbers, but also more qualitative data, because we are interacting with these folks. Some of them will come before the Board of Zoning Appeals. They talk to us, they talk to staff. We will understand their needs, their situation, in addition to having more data to work with. And we would recommend that we wait to make any modifications to the ordinance if you would bear with us as we roll this system out that seems to be working well so far and gain more information and more understanding. And we can brief you so that you also share that understanding when we have the additional info. Now, with that said, if you do seek to do things right now to the ordinance, we do think, after much discussion among legal and my staff and all the folks involved, there are two routes that we think can work. The one is to create a floating zone, where you could actually create a zone that could be applied to a property, not unlike our accommodations overlay zone, which would enable short-term rentals, and that would be a rezone. So that would go through Planning Commission and to you as well. So that's one way to do this. And another way to enable the things that you all have requested is simply to modify the ordinance. The reason that you've requested variances from it is because the ordinance doesn't allow these things to happen. So that's the other thing that can be done, is you can modify it. But the staff's recommendation is not to do that at this time. We would like to continue to work and gather more data. So with that said, the system is working. We are working on bringing people in, and we are working on enforcement for those that we have received complaints about. And with that said, I'm here, I can answer as many questions as possible. I also have legal, I also have livability. And short-term rentals, as you all know, is among the most, if not the most, complex issue that we are facing in our planning department in general. But we're happy that this thing is off to a good start so far.
Sheely, Wagner, Mitchell, and Jackson.
Thank you. Of the 87 letters that have gone out, are they in certain areas? Are they spread out all over? Where are those properties?
This is the point when Mr. Riccio is going to have to come to the microphone to answer that question for you.
Unfortunately, there you go. Okay, what we're finding and what Jacob was explaining, the software is going through this data for us and the online advertisements, and they're validating. From validation, it comes to us. Once it's validated that they are illegally operating, our first line of approach is issuing a warning letter throughout the entire city. It's not focused downtown, West Ashley, it's all over. We are finding more so that most people want to comply. Today we had several more that dropped their listing. And an interesting note is July the 10th was the first day that applications were being received by zoning. July the 9th, we already had data input with our company, our contractor, and 150 people dropped their listings right away. So we're going to have this kind of balance of people that want to do the right thing and the people that want to just get away with it. So far, my guys have really been working hard. They're interacting with the public that aren't so happy, but we're dealing with that. But we are seeing that most want to come into compliance. The other good thing about having this software, the Charleston County has it as well, so we're able to communicate with them, and we have a lot of people with 6% properties that aren't living there that are rated at 4%. So they're getting away with not paying their proper property taxes. We're identifying those individuals and sending that information to the county as well. So it's really strengthened our communication with the county. We're able to give them information to in turn have the individual with property tax records up to date. So it's going well. It's all over the board. Daniel Island, James Island, Johns Island, West Ashley, downtown, so it's going quite well.
Councilmember Wagner.
I appreciated all those numbers, but it sure be helpful if you'd give them to us where we could read them, because I can't remember that much. That's the first thing. Second part of it is, you know, hey, we're working on it, but we need you to do something to the ordinance. What? And how long is it going to take? That's the next question I would ask of Jacob. And you know, just give us what you just told us, right, and that way we could digest it. And I'm ready to go next week. We're going to be back here on, you know, and just, you know, give me something specific and I can live with it, you know, specifically what you want us to do.
I think he's requesting that you give him a little more time to experience the new system and the kinds of requests that are coming in. Oh, if only I could qualify by having this in place or that. We need a little. They're asking for a little more time.
Yeah, we're looking 30 days, 60 days, 2 years. You know, that's kind of what I'm looking for.
You know, when we rolled this ordinance out, I think that we collectively said we would do this thing for 9 months and do a formal report back. It's been about 2 months now working under the system, and we have effectively certified 6 properties. So with that said, I think we need enough case studies to be able to say we understand how this works in Outer West Ashley, Inner West Ashley, James Island, Johns Island, Upper Downtown, Lower Downtown, and Daniel Island. I want to be able, as your planning director, to tell you that we understand the conditions around short-term rentals in each of those different areas of the city, because each one they're radically different. You know, because they have different parking needs, the houses are different parts of, you know, the city, they're spaced apart differently. And I can't tell you that I fully understand how that works right now. So I would like enough data to be able to tell you this is what we see in the different parts of the city. With that said, you know, at that pace, you know, we need a few more months in order to be able, for me to be able to advise you realistically about how this thing is behaving and how it's working. I don't honestly know the effect of the new system on the different parts of the city until we get some more information back and until we talk to more of the people who want to operate. And we're not inflexible or we're not closed off to the idea of modifying the ordinance. You know, with the task force and even with our own staff, we've always said there are things that we can do to modify this as it goes forward that could improve it. We've always been open to that, but we intentionally drafted it, you know, tight in order to be able to test it then, and then we can open it up later. Because once you give away property rights that ride with the property, you can't get them back. Getting the genie back in the bottle with short-term rentals is going to be very, very hard. So I would like a few more months, and I'm reluctant to put an exact date on that. And in fact, maybe Dan or legal could help to inform that too. But we need at least a couple more before I can realistically tell you how this thing is behaving.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Well, mine's a little different. I think Jacob knows where I'm coming from with this. I think you know where I'm coming from.
That's right.
Well, it's on the King Street corridor, and I mentioned before, any apartments over a store, businesses, that's not going to take away housing stock. That's people with a family is not going to live on top of a bar or a store along the King Street corridor. And that's the only thing I was talking about. That's right. Not any house in the community, not in the residential area. I was only speaking about these apartments over a store on the King Street corridor, just along King Street. And as long as they meet the parking requirements, and that's what I advise Jacob about. And then if we have to modify it, I'll modify it to include that in there, because this is what I wanted to see a long time. We were talking about this a long time. And just to modify it to include those stores. And that will be 6%, because they'll be 6% because they're over a store. And yet on the King Street corridor, if you find you don't have that many of it along the King Street corridor to deal with. So that's what I want to include in that short-term rental, and that's what I mentioned before when we talked about it. And that's what I would like to even modify to include that in this ordinance.
Okay, Councilmember Jackson, then Lewis.
Yeah, thank you. I was curious about the first number I think that you gave us, Mr. Lindsay, of the ones that had come in to apply to be made eligible, and that number was like a little over 100, and you've done maybe 6 or 7 of those. So what's happening to the other 80? How fast do you think you'll be able to do them, the honor of processing? And
It seems to be taking about 2 months right now, and during that time, some of the certifying departments have been under an extraordinary workload, and we think that's going to come off a little bit as we go into the fall. So we may be able to shorten the time that it takes to get through the approvals process down to a month and a half or even less, which is relatively low for obtaining a permit of any type. But that means a review by building inspections, fire. They have to go through this, well, first of all, zoning, of course. Then building inspections and fire, and they have to submit a site plan so that we understand they can park a car there and people can get out in the event of a fire. All the reviews of those plans takes a little bit of time. With that said, we've received 102. We've worked through a total of 15 of those, and if we can speed it up, staff are getting better at this. Hopefully we can get through a few hundred before the end of the year and really understand the thing a little bit better.
And so are those people getting your feedback along the way? I mean, it's one thing to turn in an application and then just sort of have it go into a quiet zone that...
Good question.
So what are you doing to encourage the people?
We do not refund fees. If someone comes in and they give us an application that ultimately is denied, their fee is not refunded to them. But that said, though, there are, and I'm not the expert in fees, there are multiple types of fees for an application, and for this one as well. I think there are 3 different types.
I'm sorry, I said feedback. So are you in communication with the people as you're processing their application, so they know that at least they're making progress through your process?
Yes, my zoning staff are in communication with the applicants as they go through the process. Yes, they are.
Councilmember Lewis?
Oh, yes. A question and a comment. How for person, say a person lives in Ashleyville, and they live 2 blocks from the house they want to put in a short-term rental. They meet all of the qualifications, but they're not living on the property, but they live 2 blocks from the property. They won't be able to qualify.
If the property is a 6% property, meaning that it's a second, it's not their primary residence, then they would not be able to qualify under this existing ordinance. That's correct. This is the new ordinance is for 4% properties only. The owner has to reside on that property. That's correct.
Your people own your about call about a certain house, and this person has 2 citations and going to court next week. So I know that it's working from your standpoint.
Councilmember Moody, did you have your hand up? And then Griffin, and then Gregory. Right.
I know that I've talked with Mr. Lindsay about this thing, and I think what we're doing is probably right, is the way we're going about it. But I think I'm familiar with the property that Mr. Lewis was talking about. Was that on James Island?
Oh, this is an Ashleyville.
Well, I think there's one on James Island. And I know there's some properties out there that have, they meet maybe all the criteria, but let's say they don't have on-street parking. But there's a parking debt, within 100 feet or maybe even 50 feet. So they could meet it, but for those little exceptions. And I don't know how we're going to, and I think that was really when we started through this thing, I asked that some exceptions be allowed, and that's what you responded to me, is it's going to be very difficult. But if there is a way that those kind of properties that we think might be, that we could put them kind of at the end, you said you wanted more time, let those people go ahead and do what they're trying to do, but for those exceptions, but just, I don't know if we can even legally do that, but it seems like we shut them completely down and we're not getting the information that we need to maybe monitor it or change the ordinance to allow it. If you tell them no, then we don't know about it. And maybe that's what we want, but it just seemed to me like, but for those little exceptions, that if we could allow them to maybe go ahead until we get some definitive stuff done here. And I don't know whether that'd even be legal. I'm just...
Well, thank you, Councilmember. The staff are going to enforce the ordinances on the books. That's what they're going to do. I don't think they can, they got to do what you all have passed.
Right.
With that said, we're tracking the information on each individual case. And I think that we could look at any kind of criteria related to all the cases we've reviewed and bring that forward. For example, staff could say, let's look at all the cases where they had parking within 50 or 100 feet. and let's see how many that was. Do those negatively impact the neighborhood? What would be the effect of allowing those? We can look at those cases and pull those out, or whatever the issue may be. So we got a ton of information on both those that are being certified and those that are being turned down right now. And we can call all that information and really look at how the thing is working. So we're getting all that info as we go. We're not just turning them away and then the case is closed. We got all the information about why they pass the ordinance or why they don't. And we can even do case studies on individuals and look at why they were able to qualify or why they weren't able to qualify, and get good info back and inform you all so you can make decisions. That's what we're hoping to be able to do.
Yeah, well, if I owned a building downtown that was outside of Canterbury, Ellenborough, whatever, how would I know that I could, how would you get the information to me if I looked at Laura and said, well, I don't have off-street parking, I'm just not going to apply?
Right. Well, the first thing you would do is go to our website. We have all the information on there. We have a great checklist that you can get from the website. You can go through that and look and see. And most people can determine just by looking at the checklist whether they can qualify or not. If that doesn't work, all you got to do is just call the permit center downstairs, just like any other permit, and they will put you in touch with the correct person. Eventually, you'll probably get to one of my zoning staff, and they can look at your individual case, and they'll talk to you about whether they think you'll qualify or not. And if you do, you come in, they give you the official forms, and they'll go through it with you. I mean, I think so far we've had pretty good response from folks. Even some of the folks who weren't able to qualify have told us, the system worked well and we were able to get good responses from people. So it's pretty clear whether you qualify or not.
Well, yeah, and the question becomes, I mean, I don't even remember the lady's name. She was on James All. I think she must have been.
Grant. LaShonda Grant.
No, that wasn't her. It was another lady. She has a condominium over there and some kind of thing. And she called me and she said that she gave me the criteria. I said, well, you're not going to qualify. And I told her if she keeps advertising, I said, you're going to get a letter from Mr. Riccio. And I think it was the next day she got a letter. She took a picture of it and sent it to me and says, yeah, you're right. He just wrote me. So she just kind of dropping out of the system. So in talking with her, I guess her feeling was that there was probably a lot of people in that complex that might want to do short-term rentals. So the question becomes, that might be a viable place to have them, but because we're just not allowing that, I mean, they just kind of fallen off the radar, and so they're just not eligible. And we would never know that maybe we need an exception for that. I'm just trying to figure out what the right way to do all this stuff is, and I know you guys are struggling with it, and I am too. So anyway, I'll work with you.
Councilmember Griffin.
I got a couple of questions, but I want to make sure I got these numbers right. The 353 confirmed, that is 353 are confirmed that they are allowed to do a short-term rental, but that doesn't mean that they've come in for a permit.
No, Councilman, what that means is that the software has identified them by looking out on the internet. They see an advertisement, and then the staff have verified that that advertisement exists. So we know that they are out there, they're operating a short-term rental, or at least advertising one, and the staff have verified that that is the case. It doesn't mean that they're legal. But it could still be an illegal one. Doesn't mean that they're legal or illegal. It just means we know they're out there, and we haven't managed to match them up yet.
Well, the one thing about all these numbers that stick out to me is that 102 applications in the last 2 months seems kind of low. So I was thinking maybe we could do some more community outreach, because believe it or not, a lot of people don't come to our meetings or listen to our meetings. And so there's people that are probably still doing it that would maybe come in and follow the rules that just haven't. I mean, you saw what happened when we changed the parking meters. They came 4 months later to argue it after the budget had already been passed. So maybe we can put it out through our civic notes and some of the other outreach things that we do to say, hey, if you have a short-term rental and you want to do it legally, please come in and apply. I'd like to see us do some outreach while you get your extension. Hopefully you get it. And my other question is, have we talked to any of these listing sites since we started our software? We have any relationship with them at all? We're going to pretty much have to operate without them helping us, right?
We have not. My zoning department has not been in communication with the platforms. I don't know if you've been out in outreach to them.
Not the sites themselves. They don't like us too much.
So they haven't said they're willing to work with us to get these listings down. We're just going to have to go after these people.
No. Our partner is SDR helper, which is the enforcement side, that digs this information up. So we're not even communicating with those companies that advertise the property themselves. Yes, sir. So, what else? We've got a community meeting coming up, class on October for that. Good. And to answer your other question briefly, when my guys are encountering the public and making a case, and they want help, we offer that help. We work with them, put them in touch with zoning to see if they want to go further. So we are reaching out, if you will, and so that seems to be working as well. And if you notice, the first couple of weeks, I think it was like 44 applicants, but once we started talking to people, it jumped up to 100. So just educating them has been helping.
Councilmember Gregory and then Waring. Microphone.
1669 listed.
Right.
Of that, 1,029 are currently under review. Am I correct?
That's right.
297. I had 299. Okay.
That's right.
We say that we have 181 legal. Am I correct?
So
either B&B or STR.
They were pre-existing.
Understand.
That's right.
Okay. And of the 1,027 under review, 350 was what? I wasn't sure what you.
The 353 have gone through the validation process with the company, with the STR helper.
Okay.
So they know they are advertising illegally.
Okay.
That's our first batch, if you will.
Okay.
So we're working on that batch now.
Okay. Go ahead. Let me just follow up. Okay. If I subtract the 181 that's legal from the 1669 that's listed, that gives me those that are operating illegally. Am I correct? They don't have a permit, they're not under the old system, they're just operating. Am I correct?
If I'm understanding it.
Well, there's going to be a little bit of play in that, though, and here's why. Some of that 181 are historic beds and breakfasts who do not use online listing platforms.
Okay.
They have their own website, or some of them are just families that have a house and you call them. You know, they don't use the online system, so the numbers aren't going to exactly add up when you factor in the old pre-existing B&Bs.
I understand, but we get pretty.
It'll be close.
We get pretty close.
That's right.
And what I'm getting at is, after we've done that total listing, we've got 1,027 that's under review. Am I correct? By your staff.
The 1,297 are still with the company digging the information up for us.
Okay.
The lower number of 353 is what we have in our lab. That's what, it's going through the process. They're out there, they're checking them, they validate them, they send them to us. We follow up with warning letters, background. They visit every site. They knock on doors, they get as much information as they can to build the case, and then go forward with that.
How much dollars have you collected thus far?
0.
And that's because...
On an enforcement level. We haven't been to court yet.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, we have not been to court yet.
To me, there's potentially a lot of money out here.
Yes.
Okay, on the enforcement side. And I'm just trying to figure out at what point do we get to that so that it can help pay you, your staff, and everybody else.
Well, at the rate we're going, God, I hate this thing. I don't think it's going to take that long, to be honest with you.
Okay.
We do, at y'all's request, or some councilman's request, was we have contracted with an attorney that's going to be our sole prosecutor. So that's going to help us with the cases that we do have. Now, take into account, with due process, you're still going to have those people saying, I want a jury trial, I want a continuance. So we're held at bay with that. So a jury trial throws things into never land sometimes, and it just takes time to get caught up. So once we start building the cases, you will be able to give you more numbers. But at this point, we can't give you any because we haven't even prosecuted any of them yet.
Councilmember Waring.
And then the last question is this floating zone idea. It'll be interesting to see if that works, but in the case of Elliott Borough and Cannon Borough, to simplify it, all we have to do is extend the overlay. And it's my understanding that the neighborhood wants that, to extend their overlay to areas that are currently not in their overlay zone, but they're connected, okay? I think beyond President Street or somewhere up in there. And I wasn't sure as we start thinking about making any changes to the ordinance, whether or not that came up, because those two neighborhoods are pretty together in terms of wanting to allow others to participate. Of course, it's 6%, but to extend the overlay.
So we have discussed at length, I feel like, every aspect of this thing, and one of them is the issue of expanding or changing the extent of the existing STR overlay zone, and that is an option that is before you. It is nuanced, though, in terms of how it works legally. And even I don't understand all the contours of that, and you need a brief from legal. But I do know that I've heard from the neighborhood, there's a couple of cases where folks have sought to extend the zone, and some of them I've heard support, and others I've heard opposition. So I think it depends on exactly where we're talking about. Like all things short-term rental related, it's complex. It's not simple, and ultimately, though, it is one of those things that would be an option. I don't know if I can advise you if it's good or bad, but it's an option that's out there, like the floating zone, to modify the extent of that boundary.
Thank you.
Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some of this is going to be a repeat. We spoke about some of these changes, Mr. Lindsay, at least 4 months ago. Okay? And we did that when we voted to pass what's in place now. We had 4 or 5 bullet points to amend the ordinance, and we're still talking about those same 4 or 5 bullet points. For example, if a person, when you rent out your owner-occupied house, you have to be there. That should have been changed by now. No one is going to be more concerned about the property than the person who has it as their primary residence. So this thing about, and we did this back in April, at most May, that's still not part of the ordinance. The Planning Commission had that idea, which was a very good idea, but the task force didn't pick up on it. The part about having dedicated parking and not being able to move cars around in a driveway. Right now, there are places that qualify, but for having to move cars around in the driveway. We spoke about that back in April or May. That has not made itself into the ordinance today. So when you go out and you try to get your numbers are going to be faulty. Because if those two things were in place, you'd have people that would be eligible today that could apply for a permit on a legal basis. So when you come back with these numbers, and we all have heard this with computers, garbage in is garbage out. If we put in bad numbers, we're going to get bad numbers. The part about being in a commercial district in close proximity to a parking garage, that's what Mr. Moody was talking about. That's not hard to write into the ordinance. That's not taking any houses off of owner occupancy status in a commercial district in close proximity to a parking garage. You would think we would want people to park in a parking garage. We've had this conversation back in April and May. I've had the conversation very recently with legal, and maybe you can address that. You only had a week or so to look at it, but my point are there's certain things right now that we have chosen winners and losers right now, and that's not fair. We passed the ordinance 4 or 5 months ago thinking some of those, and when I voted, I was thinking some of those changes would be made before it went live. And now we're talking about asking for more time. This is going to be a work in progress. Listen, if I have a house with a historic district designation on it, I'm one of the winners. But by the same token, this lady who has almost a 3/4 of an acre with a house passed down through the family that can park off street, she's one of the losers. That's not right. So when it comes, Mr. McQuinney, I didn't want to call you Mr. Chip, but anyway. If you can come to the microphone, how long is it going to take to get into ordinance form some of these things that I'm repeating again that I had a discussion with you? It shouldn't take 3, 4, 8 of the year to get the ordinance change to do that.
Yes, sir, and we met maybe
Monday a week ago, I believe. I appreciate the meeting. I appreciate the meeting.
Yes, sir, and I can make those changes. I know they're not on the agenda for the next meeting, but I could certainly make the updates to the ordinance that you requested, and I wrote them down again, and have them ready for an agenda item in October.
Thank you, Mr. McQueen.
Yes, sir.
And one last item, and I'll yield the balance of my time on this. When it comes to... I just love my colleagues on this council, man. I just love them, man. The revenue portion. We spoke in terms of, we had a good discussion. I thought we were supposed to be working on this. This is new revenue. The revenue from the business license fees and net of enforcement, court costs and all of that, would be dedicated towards affordable housing. If some of these units are going to take rentable units off of the market, then obviously, hopefully, if we can develop a stream of income off of this revenue, we can help to create affordable housing. We spoke in terms of that 4 or 5 months ago. How long does it take to get that incorporated into the business license fee ordinance?
That would be probably longer from my end because I haven't really worked on business license ordinances before. But I'll certainly talk to other legal staff and we'll see if we can do that on the same
I believe it or not, I think we already have a
sense.
3% fee that goes towards affordable housing now. It's just that when these new dollars get caught up in the general fund, we all know that's the black hole. It doesn't reemerge. So while this revenue is just in the early beginnings, to create affordable housing, we need to develop streams of repeatable income. So that's why I would ask for that more ordinance to come forward. Thank you so much for listening to this, probably for the 3rd time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Seeking.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. One of the things that we knew going into this when we adopted this ordinance was there was a disconnect between what we allowed and what was going on out there. And I think there was a number of people around this table that once we put this ordinance in place, were interested to see whether or not Dan and his team could actually deliver on what they said they could do, which was come up with a way to go and combat what we knew in our minds to be illegal short-term rentals, but to match that up with some hard evidence that could move forward and bring back to us. And to me, the numbers that you've given us tonight show that we do, once we have this ordinance in place, have the ability to identify with certainty who's out there operating legally and illegally and move forward. But I remember in my mind when we first saw the numbers from the Convention and Visitors Bureau, it was about 870 we thought were illegal on the peninsula. And then it expanded to a number that was almost twice that in the city of Charleston. And in the short period of time that you all have been up and running, I think you've told me you've started at least some form of enforcement action against 87. So that's either a letter or a summons or all that. So that's somewhere between 5 and 10% of the stock of illegal that we knew to be out there in a very short period of time. So on the enforcement side, I feel comfortable that you all were right, and I was probably, if not the chief skeptic, there was a few others down the end of the table here, one of the chief skeptics. So to me, the software and the staff working on it seems to be working. And I will just say, I know that there's going to be some talk about tweaking, but I will just tell you from my perspective and from my constituency, and I don't know if all of you have had different experiences, the implementation, the adoption, implementation, and now enforcement on this ordinance is very popular. I have gotten, if any, I can't think of any complaints, but people like the fact that we're out there doing something about it. So we'll see where this all goes. I know that there's some call for some adjustments, but I think just the big picture, those of you who didn't think we could enforce this ordinance, we can. We just need to make sure.
Just to add, this is right at a month of work.
Right.
So we're just starting.
And I'm sure you're going to report back to us how we do on the prosecutions and
Yes.
livability court and all that, so great, thank you.
Councilmember Shade.
2 questions. Where will you be in 30 days from now on this? 30 days.
On enforcement or on?
No, 30, where will you be in 30 days from now? You've given us these numbers and you've broken all this down. What do you think you'll be in 30 days from now? How will these numbers flush out in 30 days?
What do you think? A month out?
With enforcement?
What do you think?
No, with all that you're doing. You've gone through these numbers. You've 353 have been confirmed. You processing applications. You're verifying information.
Probably double.
How are these numbers going to change in 30 days?
They'll be, if not doubled, more than doubled.
So we'll have a better feel in 30 days.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking 1 month.
In 1 month, okay.
I mean, with what we have now and getting up and
That's what I
running.
mean.
So within another month, I say, at the rate we're going, having 3 full-time enforcement officers working on this 5 days a week, sometimes 6, then I would say double, if not more.
So if you come back at our second October meeting, we'll go.
I'll have more stats.
More
yeah.
stats. The second question I have, is this is for legal, and this goes back to what Dan mentioned earlier. The problem with enforcement is that this is we made this into a criminal act, and because it's a criminal act, certain constitutional rights kick in, right, to a jury trial, for instance. And because it's a municipal court, that is the last court to have any priority over other courts, and so the continuances are afforded to lawyers and to litigants because it's on the bottom level of that. What options do we have of taking this out of the criminal proportion to make this a civil fine instead, which will help speed the process of the enforcement collection part of all this? Can we do that?
I don't believe we can do a civil fine, and I've just never dealt with that on the, keep in mind I'm new to this side of government, relatively speaking, but I handled the 4 Atlantic Street case, for instance, and you can get an injunction. The problem for me with an injunction from a circuit court is that you not only have to prove that they violated and get the injunction to enforce the ordinance, then you have to prove that they violated the injunction, and then you get to your contempt damages, or whatever you're going to get for contempt. So that's kind of, from my experience,
you can get a TRO pretty easily.
Right, you get the TRO,
and then you have to put up a bond to do that.
Correct, and then you have to show that they violated the TRO in order to to get any contempt or damages or clawback. And in that case, they settled out and they agreed that in the future we would have the ability to claw back any revenues that they obtained. But honestly, if you get a TRO, typically they're not going to put the punishment in the TRO. They're going to wait until there's a contempt hearing and then tell you what you're going to get.
But the fines could be higher because we're capped out at 1,000 whatever on criminal fines
per day.
Per violation.
Per violation. And I'm not sure if a judge is going to stack that. There may be another constitutional issue regarding that. But if we looked at a little bit harder at the civil aspect of this, it may be able to increase the fines, and it may be able to because once you get a TRO, they've got to stop. They are temporarily restrained from operating under a civil mechanism, as opposed to, even if they're charged criminally, they can still operate, technically.
But they get caught again.
And they get caught again. They've taken that risk. I understand that, but they've taken that risk.
We've already issued one person 2 summonses for different violations for continuing to rent their property after being given a summons for doing so, and taking their advertisement off the.
Can I suggest we take the legal discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it to the floor, for them to be
get some professors from the law school involved. Councilmember Lewis.
We can look at those options.
Yeah.
I think there might also be an administrative option if we want to go the civil route too. But if we could look at all those options and come back and report.
Sure.
Sometime in maybe second meeting in October.
Great. Councilmember Lewis, and then let's move on.
Mr. Riccio is right. His code enforcement officers advised this gentleman. They told him he took the site down on Tuesday, but he took it down. Oh, on Tuesday, he said he took it down. On Sunday, I got a picture of 8 people moving in there with suitcases. So if anybody goes by a site you think it's illegal, do just like this. Just take a picture and you get it. But that's right. They got two court dates.
Citations.
2 court dates. I got it ready.
All right, thank you all. That was very, very good discussion. We're going to move forward with our council committee reports. First is our Committee on Recreation. Councilmember Gregory.
Mr. Mayor, before we go on further, Mr. Lindsay, when would I be able to modify to include that portion of those particular apartments over those stores that I mentioned along King Street corridor? That's the thing we was mentioning when we first started the short-term rental. That's one of the things I brought up on council about that. That's the only thing I brought up on council about it.
Right.
We'll add that to Mr. McQueenie's list.
I think
things that he said he would.
That's the best thing to do.
Ordinance changes for you.
Okay.
We'll have to vote them up or down.
Yeah,
right.
Okay.
Absolutely. You got that one, Chip? Yes, sir. Okay. Councilmember Gregory, Recreation Committee.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Mayor and Council, on September 10th, 2018, the Recreation Committee met, and we met to discuss amending the Code of the City of Charleston, South Carolina, 21 Section 113, to appeal the process for public property or property to the public trespass notice. And someone just asked me what that meant. If, for instance, someone is given a citation, a warning, or a ticket for trespassing, and they want to appeal it, normally they would have to go through the court system. What this will do is allow that appeal to come before the Recreation Standing Committee in order to make a determination. It was voted on unanimously by the Recreation Committee, and I recommend that this body does the same.
We got a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, our Committee on Public Works and Utilities. Councilmember Waring.
Everything on the agenda, as you see it, with the exception of the Ravenel Bridge mitigation, was approved unanimously. Really would like to call out special attention to Ms. Laura Cabanis for the updating of the drainage manual. I mean, it's a ton of work she did and her staff getting that done and in place. And then on top of that, she had a hurricane to worry about. So kudos to Ms. Cabanis and her staff. But beyond that deferral on the information with the mitigation, Ravenel mitigation, which will be carried forward to the next meeting, everything passed unanimously, and I so move.
Second.
A motion to approve and a second. Councilmember Moody.
Yeah, I just wanted a couple things. Number one, I agree with you on Ms. Cabanis and her staff, and they really went after these ditches before. I mean, they were out there cleaning them out. And I hate to even mention this, but that effort was Herculean, but it didn't get them all done. It's almost like, you know, if we could keep that up a little bit, we could, I mean, if we could stay that focused and we had the money to do that, I would really love to see us get some of that done. And I noticed on one of the items that was on here that it's not part of your report, but it's new to your committee, and that was the new drainage outfall in South Windermere. And I know that kind of came up.
We had a presentation on it.
Yeah, and I would sure like to see that. And any comments that you or any members of the committee had could share with us tonight would be helpful.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sure you would agree with this. For a slight fee from Mr. Moody, and we'll take that money and apply it to cleaning ditches, we'll let you see that presentation.
Agreed. Councilmember Jackson.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to add to Mr. Moody's comment about how great it is to have all these ditches clean. And I do think that we need to consider that the city is now taking on itself just to make the stormwater system work better, cleaning ditches that we don't really have to do for the county, the state. So we've really taken on a big responsibility, I think, in order to serve the citizens of the neighborhoods where we are operating. So,
Councilmember Griffin, sorry.
That's all right.
We look alike. We're brothers. So.
Yeah, we are.
I kind of want to reiterate what Councilmember Moody said, only because, number one, we've got 4 more weeks of peak hurricane season, and we're never out of the woods with all these storms on the Atlantic. We have to just keep pushing forward, and if we have to pretend that we have one coming at us just so we're all on high alert and we can all work together to push that. But I think this is another good time to bring up a point we brought up a few times before, that we need some sort of maintenance schedule or something that we can, so we know, what the priorities are. I know that there are ditches that take more priority than other ditches, and some ditches that are cleaned more regularly than others. But I know that when I reach out to the department, a lot of times when I put a request in, they go out there the same day and take care of it. So I don't know what the schedule is, but I would like us to have some sort of continuity and transparency on that.
I think Ms. Cabanis will remark to that. We had a number of meetings recently about this issue, and there has been the schedule. It's been neighborhood by neighborhood. I think with the number of staff we have doing those regularly scheduled things, that when we have those, quote, emergency, on-call things, it does, can mess up the regular schedule. But one thing that we are moving forward to do, our GIS department has really been doing all kind of great stuff. In fact, I really want to put a spotlight on the work that the GIS folks did with all our hurricane preparedness. There's more to come on that. But they are putting together GIS tracking of our ditch maintenance system, and whose ditch is whose and how. And one of these things that when it's developed, and I don't think it'll take a long time, but when it's developed, I mean, even our citizens will be able to pull up online. It'll be transparent and information that the public can see. But
the mayor didn't need me, so he covered it all.
Oh, well, okay. Councilmember Shealy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also wanted to mention and thank Ms. Cabanis and also Mr. Kronsberg for the care they took with Lake Dotterer in draining that. If we had had a substantial storm, it may have saved some flooding issues along that Lake Dotterer area, and they worked well together. Now, I know we've got some more work and some things that I'm going to ask for Lake Dotterer down the road, but I wanted to thank Ms. Cabanis and thank Mr. Kronsberg. There are a lot of our constituents out there that were very happy with the way you responded to that, so thank you.
Great, thank you. I went by Colonial Lake the other day. You could smell the difference, right? And I thought they were all oyster shells, but they're actually like mussels. I don't know the species, but.
Just quickly on top of what Councilmember Shealy said, the lowering of the lakes was great, and Colonial Lake being one of them. I did see Mr. Kronsberg out there as we're trying to get the water back in the lake, and the valve there is hand cranked, and he told me how many turns it took to get that thing back in place, like 247 turns of the crank to get it back in place to open so the waters could come back in the lake. And Mr. Kronsberg did it alone the other day. I saw him out there clearly cranking away. He's looking fit back there, Mr. Mayor. Really good.
We'll look at getting a motor for that. Okay, I don't think we voted yet on the acceptance for the Public Works Committee. Any other discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, Committee on Ways and Means.
Second.
Got a motion to approve the Committee on Ways and Means. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is our bills up for second reading. We have items 1 through 20. 1 through 20. Is any of those somebody wants to carve out and have some discussion about? Councilmember Moody?
Well, the first 5 were on our agenda before, and they deal with this Upper Peninsula zoning and also with this height district classification, those 5. And then number 6 was added. I'm not sure, it was not on the last agenda, but it was on this one. But all of them have to do with that Upper Peninsula. And I had some concerns about that Upper Peninsula. Basically, I think Councilmember Mitchell, that's his district that some of this is in. And I thought we were going to have some kind of an update or a briefing or something on that Upper Peninsula, because I don't think to me it hadn't been completely aired. And then I see it back on the agenda. We deferred it because Mr. Mitchell was not here at the last meeting, but it's back on, and I hadn't gotten any update. I was concerned about the affordable housing and some of these trade-offs that we were given that to me didn't make a lot of sense. The one that I would mention right off was that if you had some kind of secured bicycle rack, that you got some additional height or something. And to me, the fact that you have the storage capacity, to me that didn't make a lot of sense. What you should say is if you have a car, you ought to, if you're going to have parking space, or you shouldn't have parking spaces in that property, period. And then you could maybe get some height restriction or some additional capacity. So I just wasn't sure where all this was going. I was confused.
I think these items are actually to rezone specific properties, but not change the UP zoning. Is that correct?
Mayor, that's exactly correct. And we have been discussing amendments to the UP zoning that came first to you, and then it went to the Community Development Committee. We are set to brief the CD committee because it's a matter that relates primarily to affordable housing. That effort to amend the UP ordinance now is with the CD committee and is a totally separate matter from these rezonings. Yes, they are using the UP category, but this is a property rezoning. The amendment would not apply to these properties until that amendment, if y'all see fit, is done. So that's at CD committee to amend. That's a separate issue from these rezonings that are coming to you tonight, if that makes sense.
Councilmember Jackson.
That didn't really, I'm still confused.
Well,
yeah.
I think that's true. These 5 items are literally going to put these properties into the existing UP zoning.
Correct.
And we won't have the benefit of any changes to the affordable housing
Exactly.
requirement.
That's what I was trying to say.
So I think the concern is, how much do we want the affordable housing component that is going to be radically improved if we would go forward with the changes to the Upper Peninsula zoning that we've now essentially deferred. We didn't have it on the CD agenda this past time, so I don't know when we're bringing it back. And if we are bringing it back, what are we going to do at the CD committee that we can't do at the council? I agree with you. I think that there are properties now that are, reading about the changes proposed in the Upper Peninsula zoning and hurrying up to get grandfathered into the existing one that they think they can work with better. So I am concerned about having all of these items now grandfathered out of any changes we would make for UP.
You want to respond at all?
Councilmember, that will come back to the next meeting of the CD committee. It didn't come to the last one because we actually moved it up in order to accommodate the LIHTC deadline for the other matter that we were reviewing. That will come back at the next meeting of the Community Development Committee.
All right. Councilmember Waring and then Seekings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When we voted at not the last CD meeting, Community Development meeting, at that time, we deferred the Upper Peninsula changes for better affordable housing initiatives. And when that came forward, when these properties came forward, and Council Members Lewis and Mitchell were not at the last meeting, we deferred this. The property on King Street Extension, that's by the body shop. I don't know.
It is the body shop, I believe.
Well, yeah, and there's one right next door to it. That's right, Singleton Body Shop. That's close to the Silver Hill area over there. You put an 8-story building over there, you changing that community drastically. And right now, on the UP, if I'm correct, these people can eventually put, potentially anyway, an 8-story apartment complex there, or whatever. They can go up 8 stories. And I think we need to really think about doing that on that end of town right there. There's a really vulnerable little low to moderate community. I call it Silver Hill. Am I calling it right, Councilmember Mitchell?
No, sir. Silver Hill is just beyond my old business at 1553 King Street.
What's the little area in between?
The area right behind Joseph Floyd Manor.
That's the Montfort Street and all that behind there.
Right.
And you have a small community, excuse me, Mr. Mayor. You have a small community behind there with single-family homes.
Right.
That's all behind there. That's all back there. But so even with that tall building, if you put there, if it's approved to go there, it's going to block that whole area from the entrance, because you have a Joseph Floyd's Manor on the corner, and then you're going to have that there. You're going to block them completely, because you have that goes all the way to Rutledge Avenue, the street, the Montfort Street. So that's a little area back there, and I know those people, they're going to complain like a devil if it happens back there. And they'll be fighting back there. It's going to be a big fight with the people back there.
I think we're doing the wrong thing if we do that, and I think
it's going to be a big fight.
This is one where you look out for the small people on this one. You know?
I mean, a full story, I don't know if you...
Councilmember Seekings? No comment?
Not until this comes back.
Councilmember Griffin?
Would it be better for us to wait until they have the community development meeting before we take these up? Or, okay, we could do that too.
When the ordinance gets done, the ordinance gets redone, if these people want to apply and bring it back, then fine. But I do believe, I think you're right, Councilwoman Jackson, that some of these words are getting out that there may be some room for changes, and then all of a sudden we're getting a bevy of applications.
See,
Councilmember Mitchell, this is in your district,
yeah,
correct?
I was looking at it a little differently on Morrison Drive. Morrison Drive with the high height, you know, that's the new area that's going to be higher heights. But when he came to that little area there, I don't know exactly what was going to be built there. I don't know exactly how high it was going to be built. See, and that's what's the problem now. If you're going to build that high there, I think that little community back there are going to have a big fight. It's going to be a big fight, and it's going to be a big fight on me. Because the people that live in that particular area is a small little area, nothing but single-family homes there, and there's a lot of homes back there behind, on Montfort Street behind there. And you have the Burke family, daughters live back there, they own houses back there, and they're not going to want a big tall building up there in front. It's going to block the whole view. It's going to change that image altogether. An 8-story building, if you may. I don't know if a 4-story building would look better. I don't know, but an 8-story building would change that area dramatically on that corner. Because around the corner, there'd be the entrance that they turn in to go in there, and you have another street that you go in. I forgot the name of the street, but I don't think it's going to.
Councilmember Jackson?
Well, I think in response to that, Mr. Mitchell, maybe we should ask Mr. Lindsay to give us a little primer. But basically, these two items in tandem would be giving each of these properties the chance to go up to a 12-story height. If they earned all of the height credits that they needed under the existing ordinance, they could be there. So I think that is the question of the evening. You know, for me, it's about getting as much affordable housing and also fitting into the territory that you're describing. And if we take these votes now, we have no options to control it. We're giving them the approval to maximize their height and not have to pay attention to a better plan for affordability.
All right, do I hear a motion?
I'll probably have to make a motion. I know we deferred it before, but I'm going to make a motion to defer it again until I get out and speak with the people in that area and have them to come and stand in front of this council, because
1 through 6? That's what I'm going to ask.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's,
5, which is it?
let me see, that's King Street.
Second his motion if it's 1 through 6.
Let's do it 1 through 6 and just get it over the same thing, because I wasn't here. So let me make sure I get in touch with the people there and let them come out, because I don't need that problem. It's going to be a big problem there. The way it's set up in that area. Morrison Drive, don't have a problem with because that's what's going, but this is a different house, a different color going down King Street now.
All right, Chip wants to add something to the discussion.
I just need to ask Mr. Lindsay, number 5, 400-00001 is asking for a rezoning to UP, and my understanding from the applicant is it's already zoned 412 Height District.
Right.
Has that been approved and finalized? Because
that's Morrison Drive.
It doesn't really make sense that they would be zoned 412 without a UP zoning.
This kind of gets into
Just to point out to council.
an arcane component that I'd probably rather not go down this road of, but with the 412 Height District, it only goes with the UP Use District, and the two things need to go together in order to function. So in order to have that property totally rezoned, it will need both its height designation and its rezoning to its base use district, to its UP, in order for it to work. So ideally, I'm sure that the landowner would prefer for both things to be acted upon.
Can I ask, now, I do want to ask a quick question, I'm sorry.
Councilmember Seekings.
Oh, good.
One thing more, that number 5, I would change my motion to 1 through 4. The one number 5 is on Johnson Street. That's the one that had the charrette. They did the charrette, and that's when the East Side community came out with the charrette, and they approved it. The whole East Side community.
That's the one Mr. Bearden was here, and we were talking about little park that he wants to try to put out on the river.
And they also got, I think Councilman Waring asked them to have something in writing, talking about this little dock going out to if they'd be able to buy
there he is.
Property from the port, and they did that. So he provided that. So I would change my motion from 1 through 4 and take 5 out.
1 through 4 and 6?
One through 4.
No, just 1 through 4, I believe. 5 and 6 kind of go together.
5 and 6 go together. That's right. Just 1 through 4.
That's correct.
I want to amend the motion to 1 through 4.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to defer items 1 through 4. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the deferral? On the deferral, Councilmember Seeking?
Just very quickly, I mean, I hear Councilmember Mitchell wants to defer to talk to the neighborhoods in which these properties are going to be, that are located. Just as a matter of procedure, this is probably for our legal team, the Upper Peninsula zoning district is an opt-in district. When we actually drafted it up, we went and noticed all those properties. You could opt in or you could take the base zone that you had. Those are the two choices you had, right? So all these people opt in. These are people now trying to get into an opt-in zoning district. Does the mere fact that they've already got their application in, and we've already given these first reading, by the way, they're vested into the old Upper Peninsula district or not?
They would. Chip, you want to take it? You want me to take it? Anybody?
I would say it's not a site-specific development plan, it's a rezoning. So the fact that they're rezoning, sort of like if you rezone into SR1 and they change SR1 subsequently, SR1 the new SR1 would still apply. So absent them obtaining a permit and obtaining a vested right, they would be bound by the new UP ordinance. And I don't know if there's been a noticed public hearing on those changes, but if there has, then it would be a pending ordinance. So the new zoning would apply regardless of whether or not they receive a vested right.
Correct.
I apologize for sounding like a law professor.
I see outside counsel nodding his head in agreement over here.
Okay.
Then, may I ask the
Councilmember Jackson.
Does that also count then for the 5 that Mr. Mitchell has to take off? Because that's their request, to go into UP without any other site plan designations. Correct?
Would the same logic apply to items 1 through 4 that we have on the floor to defer?
5 and 6.
Oh.
They're different.
5 and 6 we just pulled down. I know, but I'm asking that by pulling them out and potentially approving them tonight, are we also saying that when they get around to doing the rest of their vested work, that if we have a new change to the UP, that then they would fall into the change category? Is that correct?
So the same idea applies, of course. However, I believe that the applicants have, in fact, submitted to our technical review committee a site-specific plan which would vest them at the existing UP ordinance. So unless they significantly modify their plan, they would be vested into the existing ordinance.
And our only choice about that property then is to vote it up or down?
And we did include the last.
That's correct.
Right, okay.
All right. So the motion on the floor is to defer items 1 through 4. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Do I have a motion?
We can take all of it.
We have items 5 through 20. Does anybody want to carve out any of those for any reason to discuss? Okay.
I'll say that.
Okay. We have a motion to approve, give second reading to items 5 through 20. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now for third reading and ratification, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. So next, bills up for first reading. Actually, just to do a little housekeeping here, we have 3 items, 5, 6, 7, that we have requests for various reasons to be withdrawn.
Second.
We have a motion to withdraw 5, 6, and 7, and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, for miscellaneous business, we have a request approval of a mediation settlement agreement.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve. Did we get a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Any discussion?
Just very briefly,
Councilmember Seeker.
Just very briefly, Mr. Mayor, this is a piece of property that's in my district. It's on King Street. It's right on the corner, just south of the corner of King and Calhoun. And if you look at this property from the street, you don't realize what's behind you, but it's a long building that is literally locked on every single side of that building. There's no way to get in and out of it other than through the front. There's no parking. There's never going to be any parking. It's a building that is, to say the least, in disrepair. And we have been agonizing over what to do with this property for a long time. It changed hands. The current developer and owner wants to upgrade it, add some units. It's perfect for student housing. It's right on the edge of the campus. And what has slowed up this process dramatically and increased the cost to the owner of this building to get something going, to put this property, I mean, it is bad repair and it needs to be in good repair, is a whole debate about whether or not we need to park that property, such to the point where it ended up in litigation. One of the things I'd ask Mr. Lindsay to look at in the wake of the settlement of this matter, which went through the zoning process, they were not approved for their request. I think, Mr. Walker, there was a request to basically, other than the 60 grandfathered parking spaces, to not ask for any more. The resolution was 60 plus 13.
Excuse me, there were 6 that were grandfathered. There was a request for something like 34.
I'm sorry, Mr. Walker. Would you please come to the microphone so it will be in the record? Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Trenham Walker, and I represent the property owner. And first, I want to thank Councilman Seekings for shepherding us through this process. And this is about the 3rd time it's been before you. But anyway, the property is grandfathered for 60 spaces. It's on King Street. It's never had any parking, never will have any parking. It's actually 3 addresses that are assembled. And the zoning request to the BZA was for a special exception for 34 more places. They granted 8, and we mediated a settlement for a total of 21. And that will make the project feasible, and now we're able to move forward.
Right. So, and I wholeheartedly endorse this. With the city got together with the property owner, we did reach an agreement. But to Mr. Lindsay, I would just say we need to look at, in the urban core and the dense parts of the city, and someday it's not going to be just all of downtown, we have to look at some form of overlay for student housing or for something that allows people to build in the dense areas without having these completely onerous parking requirements that put a burden on the community as well as the owner of the building. Because this building, if we don't approve this tonight, is going to eventually fall in. It is as bad as it gets on the peninsula, and it's shameful. So we need to work on this. I'm sorry that this developer and owner had to go through this process because it was expensive and it slowed things up. We're kind of there. This one, I hope, will get approved, but in the future, there's more properties like this out there. A good number of them.
Councilmember Jackson.
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to go along with your request, Mr. Seekings and Councilmember Seekings, and vote yes for this one. I would think that going back to the challenges that we talked about, though, at the Transportation Committee earlier in the year, as the parking requirements were changing and we were inundated with college students and their parents about where are they going to park their cars. I mean, this is truly a conundrum that we have. So I do think we need to be very strategic about it before we would say no parking is required where student housing is going to be built, because then we'll be flooding our neighborhoods, and you'll be hearing about that too.
Agreed, and that's why we need an overlay zone that's going to take, amongst others, the cooperation of the College of Charleston, who has had a bit of an epiphany lately with some things that have been going on and is looking for some cooperation from the city. The good news is for this property, it's underparked, but right in front of it is a car to stop. So, I mean, and it's right on campus. This, yeah. So I would ask the support of my fellow council members of this. Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Our council.
Mayor, I think they want to clarify something.
Okay.
Mayor, just to go back, Council, I apologize, but to go back to
Microphone.
No, this is item 12. Oh, I'm sorry, not 12. 13. There was an amendment to the Stormwater Design Manual for Church Creek that was sent to you all on under separate cover, okay? However, Laura and Steve had one minor change to make to that, which they laid on your desk tonight, and I just wanted to make sure that that was the version that you were approving. And Steve's here, and he can explain the change if you need it. But again, for the record, I wanted to make sure that what you were approving was the amendment that appeared on your desk tonight and not what was sent to you last week.
Everybody's shaking their heads in agreement.
Yes.
Got it.
That's what we passed. Everybody got that? Okay,
Thank
we
you.
passed what was on your desk. Councilmember Seeking?
Very briefly before we adjourn, Mr. Mayor, just for council members, on Thursday at noon, there is going to be a public gathering and forum on the Blue Zones project, where the Blue Zones founder is actually going to be here. We unanimously voted to endorse this project, which is going to be privately funded if it all works right. There's been some press on it, some good, some bad, some accurate, some not. So if you have any questions about it, Dan Buettner, who is a very interesting guy, by the way, and the founder of the Blue Zones, is going to be here for an hour at Charlestown Landing from 12 to 1, and it will be an opportunity for anybody who's got any questions on Thursday.
This Thursday, 12 noon, Charlestown Landing. Councilmember Griffin.
Did we set a date yet for our makeup for our workshop?
We haven't yet. I think Madam Clerk was going to poll folks for dates. Well, we will do that. So our next regular meeting is next Tuesday at 5 o'clock at Bishop Gadsden, right? We're not going to be here at City Hall. So we're going to be away from City Hall next week. Any further business to be coming before us this evening? Hearing none, we stand adjourned.